There are more than 70 screws in your phone right now. Into plane that carries you on holiday, over 3 million. The screw is everywhere, and yet nobody ever stops to think about it. This story begins somewhere you'd never expect. Underwater. Around 250 years before our era, the Greek mathematician Archimedes of Syracuse hits upon an idea that will reshape the ancient world. He builds a device for lifting water, a spiral sealed inside a cylinder that, when turned, pushes water upward against gravity itself. The Archimedes screw is a brilliant tool, but it isn't what we mean today when we say the word screw. It joins nothing. It bites into no wood. Its only job is pumping water out of mines, irrigating fields, and draining the holds of ships. What's more, Archimedes probably didn't invent it at all. The Assyriologist Stephanie Daly showed that as early as the 7th century before our era, the Assyrians were casting water screws from bronze under King Sennacherib. Archimedes may simply have seen the device in Egypt and improved it. But the principle of the screw, a spiral thread that turns rotation into straight-line motion, proved far too powerful to spend its life only pumping water. The ancient Greeks and Romans quickly found other uses for it. Yet the thing that truly changed the world was still 2,000 years away. As early as the 1st century before our era, screw presses were working all across the Mediterranean. A great wooden screw, turned by hand, pressed down a beam that squeezed oil from olives and juice from grapes. Wine and olive oil, 2 pillars of Mediterranean cooking, owe their rise to the screw. The Romans went a step further. They could already cut metal threads, both square-end shaped like the letter V. They used them in medical instruments and precision tools. But the idea of using a screw to join 2 things together? For that, the world would wait more than 1,000 years. And what happened next transformed the screw from a tool for crushing olives into the one part without which no modern machine could exist. 15th century. Europe enters the Renaissance and begins building things that have to hold together, precisely, durably, and in a way that lets you take them apart without destroying them. The first to reach for a metal screw as a fastener are the armourers and gunsmiths. Weaponsmiths used tiny screws to fasten the metal lock parts of firearms onto wooden stocks. This is the first documented moment when a screw does the job we know today, joining 2 parts together. The first screwdriver appears in a manuscript from Wolfegg Castle, dated between 1475 and 1490. Trouble is, every screw is different. A craftsman cuts each thread by hand, wife a file and a knife. Every nut fits only one specific screw. Lose the nut, and you have to make a new one from scratch. For the next 300 years, the screw stays an expensive luxury, mostly for armourers and clockmakers. And here steps in the man who will solve this problem once and for all. Henry Maudslay, an English mechanic born in 1771, the son of a soldier and a worker at the arsenal in Woolwich. Around the year 1800, Maudslay builds the first truly practical screw-cutting lathe. The machine has a lead screw linked to the spindle, so the tool moves at a perfectly steady speed end, cuts threads, wife a repeatable pitch. For the first time in history, 2 screws can be identical. But Maudslay goes further. He standardizes the threads in his workshop. He makes sets of taps and dies that produce nuts and screws to the very same dimensions. Any screw of a given size fits any nut of that size. Sounds trivial? It is the foundation of the entire industrial revolution. Because interchangeable parts mean interchangeable machines. A machine breaks, you swap out one screw, you don't rebuild the whole thing from scratch. Factories grow, railways spread, bridges go up in months instead of years. All because screws finally fit one another. In 1760, de brothers Job and William Wyatt of England patent the first machine for mass-producing screws. By the 1780s, they're turning out 16,000 screws a day, with just 30 workers. The screw goes from a luxury to something you buy by decartload. But there's one problem that, for decades, infuriates anyone who has ever tried to drive a screw. The head wife a single straight slot, unchanged since the 15th century. The screwdriver slips, the hand slips, the material gets chewed up. Everyone knows it, and nobody does a thing about it. Until 1908, when the Canadian inventor Peter Robertson drives a screwdriver into his own hand and says, "Enough." He designs a screw with a square socket in the head. The tool seats perfectly, never slips, and you can drive the screw one-handed. It's a revolution. Robertson builds a factory, starts selling, and Henry Ford wants his screws for his cars. There's just one condition. Ford demands a license to make them himself. Robertson, burned by an earlier licensing deal in England, refuses. Ford walks away, and that refusal changes history. Because in the 1930s, along comes Henry Phillips of Portland, Oregon. He buys a patent for a screw whiff, a cross-shaped recess from an inventor who couldn't sell it. Phillips offers his design to the American Screw Company. After a successful trial in a 1936 Cadillac, the Phillips screw conquers the entire American car industry, and then the whole world. So the next time you pick up a screwdriver, the ordinary one with the cross tip, think of Archimedes pumping water with a spiral, of the nameless armourers who first drove a screw into wood, of Maudslay, who taught a machine precision, and of Robertson, who said no to Ford and lost to Phillips. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story of an object you know, but don't really know at all. Because the screw isn't just a piece of metal with a spiral groove. It's proof that the biggest revolutions begin with things so small that nobody notices them, until everything starts to fall apart. And how many more of those revolutions are hiding in your own home?